first time I've done a talk in person for quite some time, so I'm strangely nervous, and I've got notes and mind maps and scripts, and I don't know whether to just throw them in the air and speak spontaneously. We'll see. So yeah, my name's Andy Goldring. I'm an activist, and I have been since I've been involved in world change since my 20s, mainly through something called permaculture, which I'll say a little bit about. Today I want to talk about community. I want to talk about permaculture. I want to talk about cities, actually. And I want to talk about a project called Climate Action Leeds project. And I guess I'd start off by saying, as I was introduced, we've all got different hats on. So I've got the Our Future Leeds, Leeds Permaculture Network, Climate Action Leeds, various other hats, Leeds Love It Sharing. And one of the things that, in a way, I could be speaking for any of those groups today, because they all share a very similar approach, which is about community. It's about a belief that we can make change through community action, through building agency within communities, building capacity in communities, through that kind of grassroots action. And there are many other ways to make change as well, of course, but that's something that I feel motivated. That's where I feel like I can make a difference, is working in communities. And I guess for me, one of the reasons why community is so important is because it's where we can relate. The first activist project I did was something called the Human Scale Development Initiative back in the 90s with this marvellous guy called Wolf White, who I learned a lot from. And human scale is a really important term. We all live in Leeds, but actually Leeds is just a container for 135-ish other names. Names like Chapeltown or Seacroft or Gipton. They're the places where we live, the communities where we live inside Leeds. People outside of Leeds have heard of Leeds or Leeds United, but actually if you live in Leeds, you know that we're a collection of many, many different neighbourhoods and communities. And it's in our community where we feel at home. I feel really at home in Chapeltown. I go for a walk every morning in Botanyton Park. I see people every day. I don't necessarily know their names, but we say hello, and that's great. We have a dog, and in a community you can plant an apple tree, and you can watch the apples grow, and you can make apple juice, and you can make cider, and then maybe you'll dance, and that's what makes life worth living. Is when you've got people that you can relate to. Even if you don't know their names, you know their face and they know your face, and you can say hello. So community is really important. Community, in fact, is a really key human need. We gain much of our psychological, emotional strength and balance from being with other people in a community. So if we get community right, then it can give us self-reliance, it can give us resilience, it can give us joy, it can give us laughter, friendship. And if we get it wrong, then we can create alienation, despondency, disconnection, and violence. Community is so important. And so thinking about how we can create community is such a fundamental thing for making a kinder world, a more compassionate world. It's integral. So that's a little note about community, and I'll come back to that. The second thing I wanted to tell you a little bit about was permaculture. So permaculture was born in the 70s, a bit like me. It started off as an idea of how do you create stable agricultural systems. If we wanted to live on this planet for more than, say, the next 50 years, maybe we should look after it. We probably need all that soil. We probably need all that water. We probably need all that fantastic biodiversity. But our current agricultural system isn't respecting that. The industrial, chemical, agricultural system just allows soil to wash away. And, you know, we know how destructive it is in terms of biodiversity. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment described agriculture as the most destructive human activity. That's agriculture. Consequently, equally, there are something like 600 million family farms around the world. But farming occupies actually the most people on the planet. Over half of the labour force on the planet is involved in agriculture. So getting agriculture right is really important, because both we can protect our living world, but we can also increase the well-being and the care for some of the poorest people on the planet. So if permaculture had just created a fantastic agricultural system, that in itself would have been a fantastic gift. And that side of permaculture is still very much growing, and I would love to see Leeds as a much more biodiverse, diverse, polycultural, many crops, sort of agricultural place. I mean, we've actually got a lot of agricultural space in Leeds. But permaculture kept evolving, and one of the things that came from permaculture was this idea of a design approach. So designing agricultural systems, designing settlements. And design is very powerful because it's actually something we all do. And if you get good at doing design, you can start to create the kinds of future, or the kinds of community, or the kinds of settlement that you really want. So permaculture design is ecological. We take our lessons from nature. And it's ethical. We've got this earth care, people care, fair shares goal. So in permaculture, we've created this ethical, ecological design approach to looking at the world around us and saying, how can we use what we've got and put it together in a slightly different way so more of our needs are met with less damage to the environment? And we're doing that now all around the world, quite successfully, very successfully in many ways. So then we have permaculture, which has been this kind of framework or connector for... if permaculture was an animal, it would probably be a magpie. I don't know if anyone else, born in the 70s, you might have watched that TV programme. You know one of them where at the beginning there's that animation and it goes off and it collects all the shiny bits and brings it back to the nest. That's kind of what permaculture has done. It's like, oh, look at that ecological building, that's good. Oh, look at that energy. It's just brought all these different things together into a framework. And it connects us with hundreds of different movements. Movements around the economy, movements around transport, all sorts of different alternative approaches to living, let's say. So, I've got no idea of time, by the way, but let's just say that's okay on permaculture for now. So we've got community, we've got permaculture. One of the things that's really exciting at the moment is how cities are starting to change and respond to the different crises that we've got. So, the ecological and climate crisis. Let's ask a question. Who feels at the moment like the government's got it totally under control, everything's fine, we just need to let them work it out? No? Oh, okay, so maybe we need to do something. Yes. So this is where cities come in. Because cities are starting to go, Trump? Oh no. Johnson? We're going to have to push this forward ourselves. And a growing network of cities all around the world, under different headings and different alliances, are saying, okay, how can cities drive change? How can cities step up to the climate and nature emergency? And it's got various names. It's called the new municipalism. or various kind of academic headings. But really what underpins this movement in cities is about more attention to democracy, more attention to participation, more attention to stepping up to the challenges that we face, more attention to poverty. And what's really exciting about that is kind of a lot of the things we've been teaching about on permaculture courses for the last 20 or 30 years. People are starting to go, actually, that's quite a good idea. Maybe we do need to retrofit all of our buildings. And maybe all the new buildings should be zero carbon and nature friendly and made of local materials. Oh, maybe we should have more cooperatives and more focus on a circular economy. Hey, that sounds quite good. And what's really exciting about that is that potentially cities can make change happen so fast. There's a lot of resources in a city. You look at, here we are in the Civic Hall. Leeds City Council strapped for cash, but nonetheless it's got hundreds of millions of pounds that it spends every year. It's got thousands of employees, it's very connected. And if we can work at that city scale with the sort of city institutions, we can really make quite a lot of change. And that's exciting. Because we know that we really, really need to make change. I doubt anyone here has read the full report from the International Panel on Climate Change. I certainly haven't. But I know I've read enough, and I've read the articles by people that have read it all. And one of the things that came out last night in our Climate Action Leeds launch, Paul Chatterton was saying they've run out of the adjectives. They're saying it's code red for humanity. They're saying change needs to be immediate, it needs to be transformational, it needs to be drastic. And remember that every single sentence in the report was signed off by every single government. This isn't just a kind of a renegade bunch of scientists that went off and created a report. Every single sentence in the report was signed off. So when they say we need immediate, rapid and transformative change, they mean we need immediate, rapid and transformative change. What we have ahead of us in the next decade is nothing short of, there's no historical precedent. And that is both a kind of terrifying and sort of deep responsibility. But it's also an enormous privilege and opportunity to create the kind of world that we really actually want. For me, I summarise that as an earth care, people care, fair shares future. And for me, I would say care is compassion in action. Care is kindness in action. Care is the point of delivery where we're actually doing the kindness, where we're actually doing the compassion. And earth care, people care, fair shares future isn't, compassion isn't some extra thing. It needs to be integral to everything that we do. So I've seen the 2-minute warning, and I should tell you now that what's most exciting is that we have a project that's been funded by the National Lottery Community Fund through their Climate Action programme. We've got £2.5 million to spend over the next 4 years to enable and support and get behind communities making change for the climate and for acting on poverty and for acting on the things that are important for them. So we're going to be supporting, we've got 4 communities at the moment, 4 neighbourhoods, expanding to 8 and then to 16. So we've got a programme of community support. We've got a network of transition partners who are going to be working on energy and food and housing and water and all the important topics. They'll be supporting the communities to come up with their own action plans, evidence-based, but driven by the communities themselves. And then we're going to bring all of that together, the communities, the transition partners, and the other sectors and agencies in the city, to think about how do we work as a city overall. And what we want to have is a participatory process to reimagine our future together. We know that what we've got at the moment isn't working for many people. It's working for, okay, but it won't last. It's got to change. So in this window, this next decade, we've got to find ways to bring it together in a new way. And at the heart of that, I think, is community, because that's where we can dance and know each other. At the heart of that is, I think, permaculture and all those other fantastic things that are happening, that have been aspiring to a better world for decades, enabled by cities and the city kind of agencies, and then supported by this fantastic project that we've got. So I'm glad I didn't use the script. I hope that was useful. If you want to know more about Climate Action Leeds, then you can just go to the website. It's called, I don't know, just Google Climate Action Leeds, I'm sure you'll find it. If you're interested in permaculture, you'll find that too. There should be a kind of final call to action, shouldn't there, really?
Don't you have a launch this week?
Yeah, so we have. I mean, I guess the call to action is quite straightforward. I'm a big believer in, follow your own skills, follow your own passion, follow your own enthusiasm, follow your own curiosity. So for each one of you, it will be different. But I'm absolutely certain that all of you, all of us, are needed in the change that's going to happen. So check out the project. If you live in one of the communities where there's that's started, maybe go and say hello, go and find out what's happening. If you're interested in any of the themes of the transition work, so transport, housing, etc., maybe engage with them. Come to one of our events. We really love what I think Leeds City Council on the whole do a really fantastic job. I really do. I'm right behind a lot of what they do. But the scale of the change and the scale of what's needed ahead of us means that now it's like all hands on deck. We've all got to show up. So see if you can show up, and if you can't, maybe just support other people that can. I think I'll stop there. Thanks.